Last week was a really difficult week for the government, and in particular Keir Starmer. He had the threat of a leadership challenge, and he also had a press week. So it was a difficult week for him. And so joining today's show is Patricia Ferguson MP. Patricia served in the Scottish Parliament under Henry Queich and John McConnell, and was elected to the Westminster Parliament in 2024 last year. So, welcome to People and Politics. Patricia, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know where to start. It's been a pretty tumultuous week down at Westminster, and I suspect Keir Starmer will be having a pretty stiff drink tonight. I know that I certainly would. What's your take on what's happened over the last few days? Amid the chaos.
Well, for people like me and the low pay grade that I'm on, as it were, in a sense, it's all kind of happening over there, and I'm not really that familiar with it, But just looking at it, it certainly doesn't look very smart, I don't think. But it would seem that there are some people possibly around the Prime Minister who have been briefing about issues that they shouldn't be briefing about, frankly. And I think if the Prime Minister was able to find out who they actually were, I think he'd have something very stern to say to them, because I don't think he's the kind of man that likes that sort of thing to happen. I know he, doesn't. But I think what's very interesting is that the person that they decided they wanted to try to diminish, I suppose, has actually handled it very well, and has made it clear that he's loyal to the Prime Minister and supports the government and will continue to act in that way. And I think that's what everybody should do, is just get on with doing their jobs, frankly.
Yeah, and I'm right in saying that, they've tried to stop a brief going a bit west shooting, and apparently, it wasn't plotting or whatever. But West Wheaton had ended up looking a lot stronger, and the Prime Minister a lot weaker. And so but the Prime Minister preempting this to try and stop this chat, it weakened himself, which is quite sad.
Well, I think the one thing that comes out of it is that, in a sense, West Streeting has very firmly put himself behind the Prime Minister and, recommitted himself to the work of the government. And I think that just makes the whole cabinet stronger, really, in a way.
Yeah.
So, hopefully that team working will continue, because I don't think there was ever a problem between the Prime Minister and West Streeting. It's other people who, frankly, have got jobs that they should be doing, and they really need to get on with them and do their job well, and not start talking about everybody else and what their aspirations may or may not be. So I don't think it helps anybody, that kind of briefing, frankly.
No, but I'm very conscious that we're only 16 months into this government, and it feels at the end of the government, by the time by the time the Conservatives got this chaotic, they'd been in power for a decade, already, and the Labour Party's only been in power 16 months, and it certainly feels that towards the end of the Prime Minister and obviously the end of the government, it's so chaotic, it's hard to believe.
The irony is that it's actually getting on and doing a really good job in a large number of areas, and making a real difference to people's lives. The Employment Rights Bill is a really important piece of legislation, the biggest piece of legislation to support workers in certainly a generation. Getting through the Hillsborough Law is a very, very important thing. The way people who lost loved ones and who were affected by the Hillsborough tragedy were treated, the way people in the Windrush scandal were treated, the way people at Grenfell were treated, really is not how people should be treated in this country in this day and age. And that particular law will make sure that never happens again. I think that's a very important thing. It's not a thing that might affect you and I in our daily lives, but I think it's important we've got a government that prioritises that kind of work. So I'm really pleased that that's happened. And, to talk of West Streeting's doing an amazing job, bringing down ambulance waiting times, putting money into the health service, redirecting things in the health service to make the experience of the health service much, much better for people across England and Wales. And I just wish our government in Scotland would follow his example a wee bit. So there's a lot of really good things going on. And the sad part of it is that all of this nonsense that goes on in politics, and it always goes on in politics, I just regret, as you say, that it's happening in our government quite as quickly as it has done. But all of that just helps to take away focus from the good things that are being done. And all you see are the things that are maybe not being handled quite as well as the other things. So it's disappointing from that point of view as well.
With all this good stuff the government's doing around what you mentioned there, what do you think the Prime Minister and his team have to do to restore confidence and to get back on track? And I suppose that, for us, to use a horrible term, a reset, another reset, what do you think he's got to do to get, put all this well joy behind him? Because from what I see right now, it's not going to go away.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right to say that it's a new government and it's only 16 months old. And in a sense, you're saying that from the point of view of, and look at the situation it's in already. I would sort of say to you, look at the situation we inherited only 16 months ago and all the problems and all the issues that were left for Labour to sort out. The infected blood scandal, which had been going on for many, many years. It was left to Labour to try and sort it out. And the bill for that is huge. And it's money that needs to get paid as quickly as possible to the people affected so that they can use that money to have a better standard of life while they're able to, while they're fit to. And in some cases it's going to their descendants in a sense, or their family members are still there. So we were left with an awful lot of things that we had to sort out, the Horizon scandal, all of these things. The economy was in a terrible mess as well. And what the government's been concentrating on doing is trying to get the economy back on track so that all of these things can be dealt with as appropriately as they possibly can be and as quickly as they can be. And, there are departments where there are huge backlogs of issues that need to be resolved. And the government is trying to systematically work its way through all of that. So I think it needs to be given a wee bit of leeway in terms of time, because these things don't sort themselves out overnight. But certainly, I think the Prime Minister will want to make sure, and I think he's made it very, very clear, that the kind of briefing we've seen is unacceptable and that it's not to be done in his name and not to be done in the name of our government. And I think that's the right thing for him to do and to say.
Yeah.
So hopefully people can just pull together now and get on and do the work and make sure we're delivering for the people of this country, because that's what we said we would do. And I, for one, take that very seriously.
You mentioned getting the economy going there, and I'm sure I heard just a few hours ago that the growth figures have been somewhat downgraded since from what Rachel Reeves thought it'd be. And of course, that must be a real blow to the Chancellor, particularly, a week out from the Austin Statement.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what's going to be in the budget.
Really? Yeah, really, no idea.
No,
Really.
absolutely not. No, and it's a funny thing, and it might be something to be interested to know. But I mean, literally, when I'm sitting in the chamber, and when the Chancellor announces her budget, that will be the first time people like me will have heard what's in the budget. So it's not something that is revealed to you. You hear leaks and you hear all sorts of stories and you hear what people want and you hear what people think they know and what they don't know. But genuinely, people like me don't know until we actually hear it from the Chancellor. So I think the Chancellor is more than capable of taking the right decisions to make sure that this country can respond to any setback that is thrown to us. Obviously, that can sometimes be very, very difficult and involves making decisions that are not easy and not necessarily the decisions you would want to make as a government. But I think she's very sensible about that, and I think she'll come up with the right package. I hope she does. Anyway, I'm sure she will when the time comes. But like everybody else, I'm sort of waiting on tenterhooks to see what's going to be in that package.
Well, not, it feels like weeks that we've been speculating about what's going to in the government, particularly speculating about tax rises. Everybody's been talking about that, but I'm sure I read this morning that she's decided not to raise tax, and if she does, if she does that, that'll look like another massive U-turn, and it wouldn't look good.
I think that's one of the problems that a chancellor has. If you say too much before the budget, if you don't then deliver exactly what you think or what people think you said you were going to do, then you get criticised. And if you don't say in advance what you're going to do, then you get criticised anyway. But people have been speculating about this budget since the last one. I mean, what I would like to see is us doing away with the two-child cap. It's something I've believed was wrong for a very long time, and I want to see us remove that completely. Now there's a lot of hints out there that that will be removed, and if it is, I think that will be a good thing. But again, you can only do the good things when you've got the money, and sometimes to get the money, you have to do things that people don't really like. But it's I mean, I think if you earn a lot of money, you should pay a lot of tax. The two things should be fairly balanced. If you don't earn very much, then you shouldn't pay as much tax. And I think if the tax system takes that view, then, for those of us that are on decent salaries, then paying a wee bit extra isn't such a big deal, or it shouldn't be. But for those who don't earn a lot of money, an increase in taxation can be a big problem. So the Chancellor will be very mindful of that, and she'll be balancing all of these things up, weighing all these things up, having discussions with officials and with colleagues and all of that, trying to make sure that what she does is the right thing for the country overall, and that we all, have a responsibility to contribute to the public services that we all use. So it's a hard decision for her.
Yeah, it must be. I wouldn't like her job, and I wouldn't like her.
Me neither.
No, I prefer sleeping at night time.
Yes.
But I felt quite surprised that we're 16 months, into the Labour government, and they've not done away with the cap yet on child benefit, and they could have done that long ago, and they could have left 800,000 children out of poverty virtually overnight. And I found it quite ironic that it's a Labour government that we've got that not done it. And similarly with disability benefits, and I'm sure you might agree that there's a lot of things that the government are doing or have not done that we wouldn't associate with the Labour government.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were quite clear before the election in our manifesto and the discussions around the manifesto that we wouldn't be able to lift the child cap because, the government or an incoming government before the shadow ministers, put it that way, are given sight of some information about the current state of the economy, for example, before an election. So the incoming government was aware that things were difficult in the economy, and they'd said very openly that they wouldn't be able to remove the two-child cap immediately, that they would want to do it, and that they would work toward doing that at some point during the 5-year term of the government, hopefully. But when we actually got into power and all of the books were opened and revealed, it became very, very clear that actually the situation in the economy was even worse than we'd feared and even worse than had been predicted. So again, it was something that, you know, had to be put on the back burner for a time. I hope the stories that are going around about the Chancellor taking that away in this budget are true. I think that'd be a really good move, because it was the last Labour government that really did tackle child poverty and brought the numbers down very, very dramatically. And I think everybody in the Labour Party would want to see that replicated going forward, because none of us want to, you know, see that kind of situation continued. I mean, there's a group has been put together in government to look at child poverty in the round and to make decisions about that based on what it finds out. And I mean, I held a forum event earlier in the year about child poverty in the constituency, because I'm very conscious that we have high rates of child poverty in my constituency, something that I'm certainly not proud of, and something that, you know, it's part of my job to try and remedy as much as I can in the years that I'm the MP. So I wanted to hear from organisations working with people on the ground about their experiences, and some of the stories I heard. I mean, you think you know what's going on, but when you're talking to people who are working day in and day out with people in these situations, you learn a huge amount. So we were able, as a result of that meeting, to put in a submission to the Child Poverty Task Force to try and influence what it was doing. And the child cap featured, you know, two-child cap featured. And, you know, I've sort of pressed on that ever since, because I thought before the election, I've thought for years that that's something that we could make a big difference on. So I'm very hopeful. But I genuinely just don't know. I can be as hopeful as I like, is what the Chancellor decides at the end of the day. But there seems to be talk that she will actually do something about that.
Good.
Yeah.
Whilst you were in the Scottish Parliament, what did the Scottish government do or not do to try and relieve child poverty here in Scotland?
Well, again, I was fortunate enough to be in the Scottish Parliament for 17 years. So I was in from 1999 at the very beginning, when we had a coalition government. It was Labour and Liberal Democrats. And
were you there when Donald Trump was first?
I was. Donald was a close
friend.
friend.
It was Donald Trump and then Henry McLeish.
That's right. So Donald was a truly wonderful man, and in a sense he's my predecessor, because although the constituency names have changed, my constituency very much mirrors the one that he represented, both at Westminster and in the Scottish Parliament. And I actually spoke about him in a debate about devolution just a couple of weeks ago. But he was also a very good friend.
He was a fabulous guy, just brilliant orator and
great orator,
very clever. You know,
still miss him, to be honest with you.
I wouldn't know what he'd make about all nowadays.
I know. Every time I think about that, I think about Donald. Donald had a habit, if things were not going well, or if he didn't like something that somebody said, he would just, I'm not going to do it because I've got glasses on and I'll make them all smudgy, but he would just throw his hands up to his face and he would shake his head. And I quite often think of him doing that when I feel a wee bit of despair about things going on in the country, you know. But he was my MP when I joined the Labour Party as well. So I worked with him for a long, long time. And he was a really good friend to me and my family. And you know, I miss him to this day, to be honest. But he was then succeeded by Henry McLeish and by then Jack McConnell, and I was fortunate enough to be asked by Jack to be a member of his cabinet, which I was for about 7 years. which I loved. It was great. I was Minister for Parliamentary Business and then Minister for Tourism, Culture and Sport, and I loved both jobs. It was really great fun. But that Labour government and the Labour-led coalition worked very happily with the UK Labour government and did lots of work to bring down child poverty in Scotland too. And child poverty had been reduced very significantly by the end of that time. Now, unfortunately, it's begun to creep up again in Scotland as well as in the rest of the UK. And I think it's important that both governments work together where they can to make a difference, because, you know, if you have a problem in one place, you can learn from what's happening in the other if they're having success. And I think the two governments need to do that much more. And I'm really pleased. One of the things I am very pleased about too is that the UK government now and the Scottish government seem to be working better together than they have done in recent years, where there seemed to be a lot of argument going on between the two and a lot of finger pointing about who was to blame. So I think they are working better together, but they can still do more. They can still do more on that. But yeah, we all need to work harder to end child poverty and to reduce poverty as much as we can. It really is.
Horrific, since the noughties. Yeah, since, poverty is just gone up and up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
And there's more poverty around now than there's been for a generation. As I see children in poverty. I think Gordon Brown did a lot to try and tackle child poverty. But he was in power for a short time.
He was. He still is very influential though. And he still talks a lot about child poverty and importantly thinks a lot about the issue and about the things that need to be done to try and reduce it, if not eradicate it completely. So I always have time to listen to what Gordon Brown's got to say, because anyone involved in politics should listen to people like Gordon Brown, because they learn a huge amount. You really do learn a lot when you listen to somebody like Gordon, just as you did if you listened to Donald Dewar. You know, people who really cared and who really thought about it and who could persuade other people as well. I think people like that are worth their weight in gold. So we could do a bit more with Gordon Brown, I think.
So and of course the Scottish government now tends to say that they don't have the levers of power to relieve Scottish child poverty, but I think we know that's not the case.
No.
And they could have more.
They could. Since we had the referendum in 2014, a lot more powers have been devolved to the Scottish government, particularly around welfare benefits. And a lot of those are now devolved to the Scottish Parliament and to the Scottish government. And I think they could focus a lot more on some of those issues and maybe think again about some of their own ways of doing things. Apart from anything else, some of the benefits that you can get in Scotland, there seems to be a really long queue of people trying to get into the system. There seem to be quite a lot of backlogs. So that could be, eradicated. That would help, because, being in poverty this week is very, very difficult, but being in poverty for the next 12 weeks makes it even harder to be able to recover from if you've, fallen into poverty because something has happened in your life that has thrown you off track a wee bit. So I think there's things like that could be done much, much better. And I think you have to, I think it's the responsibility not just of any one government minister to say, I'm going to look at child poverty because I'm responsible for X, Y, or Z. I think you have to look at it across the board, because there's different kinds of poverty. There's poverty of ambition. We need our young people to be ambitious and to want to learn and to want to be able to take up the opportunities that are there. And sometimes if you are living in poverty where perhaps your housing isn't very good, which might affect your health, or where your priority is trying to get a new pair of shoes for your wee one because they've grown out of the last pair, or because your kids, as one person at the event that I held about poverty for children earlier in the year said, she knows families where if the wee boy trips and rips his trousers, then it's a real struggle to know where the money comes from to buy a replacement pair. And you're not going to send your kid to school with torn trousers. No mum or dad wants to do that. So it's very, very difficult for people. And I think, we need to be thinking about poverty across the board. And every government minister needs to be thinking, what can I do in my portfolio? What can I do to make the educational chances better? What can I do to make housing better? What can I do to make health outcomes better, so that we're taking poverty in its broadest sense and we're all tackling it? And I really do think that that's something that governments in the past did. I'm not close enough to this government to know if they do look at it in that cross-cutting way, but I would like to hope that they would. But I'm not really seeing much evidence of that, to be honest.
No. You mentioned benefits there, and of course, welfare benefit is linked, and it's equated to poverty, and but everybody expects Rachel Reeves next week to try and take more money from welfare, from disability. I wonder how you felt about that.
Oh, I hope she doesn't do that. I haven't heard that she's likely to do that. As you know, there's quite a big review going on at the moment, the Timms review, into benefits more generally, and into PIP, particularly in England and Wales, which is devolved in Scotland.
Yeah.
So I would hope very much that that doesn't happen. And the thing I think is really good about the Timms review, well, partly it's led by Sir Stephen Timms, who's a really good man who really cares about the issue and has quite a track record of being on the side of disabled people and people who need a hand. That's a good thing in itself, but also the fact that the system, as it's going to be reformed, is being the disabled people themselves are being part of that process. They're working with him. So it's not that he's doing this in isolation. He's actually working with disability groups and with disabled people to make it a reality and to get it better for everybody. And that gives me hope for the future. It really does. I think he's very genuine in his aspirations there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Steve Tim. He's a very compassionate man.
He is very compassionate.
Very compassionate man.
Yeah.
So I think this budget is going to focus on jobs, on the NHS, and growth. So I really hope they can get the economy growing. But
Me too.
I think Rachel has got her work cut out trying to do that right now.
She has, because the global situation is not great either. She's got a lot of there's a lot of crosswinds that could knock her off course, that are nothing to do with any decision she might make, that would influence what she has to do. But I think it's a very difficult time to be a chancellor as well. So I don't envy her, as you said, I don't envy her that job at all. I think she's a very brave woman to take it on.
Yeah, I don't envy her. So having served for as long as you did in the Scottish Parliament, and now being down at Westminster, obviously the two must be very different, and apart from the obvious that you need to travel, and it's very different. And how do you find it?
It's a strange thing. It's very different in some ways because, apart from anything else, the scale of it is massive. In the Scottish Parliament, there were 129 members, and each member maybe had 2 or 3 members of staff. And then there was the sort of civil service that supported the Parliament itself, and then the civil service that supported the government. So by and large, you knew everybody that worked in the Parliament. You knew the security people, you knew the people who made the coffee or who worked in the canteen. You just knew everybody. You might not know them by name, but you knew them to say hello to. And that was lovely. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. It was small enough that you even got to know members of the opposition or members of a different party. You could actually have friendships with people. But the UK government, or the UK Parliament rather, is so much bigger. There's over 600 MPs alone.
Massive.
So it's vast, and the number of people who work in it, I've no idea how many there are, but there are hundreds, thousands maybe. And then there's I think there's something like 800 peers as well. Now,
Oh,
they're not all
yeah.
there all the time, obviously,
No.
and they're in a different part of the building, so we don't see them so often. But just the scale of everything is much greater. And the Scottish Parliament in the early days made a great effort to try and be family friendly. Now, it was only
Right.
ever going to be able to do so much, because if you live in Aberdeen, then you're still going to have a problem getting backwards and forwards. You know, you're going to have to
Yeah.
come to Edinburgh and stay there for 2 or 3 days while you're in Parliament. But you had Monday and you had Friday when you were working in your constituency. In the UK Parliament, you're usually only in your constituency on a Friday and the weekend. And also, there's no real way you can come back regularly midweek. You know, it's too big a
No.
journey. So when you go down on a Monday morning, you're usually there till Thursday night. So it's a bit more difficult. Also, things change in terms of the business of Parliament much more readily, much more often than they do in the Scottish Parliament. The Scottish
Yeah.
Parliament, you can plan ahead a bit more, but in the UK Parliament, you can't. And then there's sort of systematic things like in the Scottish Parliament, and I think this is still the case. I haven't been there for a while, so I'm not quite up to speed with it. But committees don't meet at the same time as the chamber, mainly
Right.
because there's not enough members to make both things happen. But in the UK Parliament, there can be debates going on in the chamber while you're in committee. And it might be something you really want to talk about, but you can't because you're at your committee meeting. So there's debates going on in more than one place, because we have debates in Westminster Hall as well as debates in the chamber. And sometimes you want to be at both and you can't be. So it's very similar in terms of some of its processes, but very, very different in most ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
But
I still
it
like both.
must be an amazing experience to be in the heart of British democracy. Yeah, it must
Yeah.
be really amazing.
It
Yeah.
is. I mean, just yesterday, I was actually saying that to a member of my staff yesterday. I was sitting in the chamber and I suddenly thought, I used to watch this on television.
Yeah.
And it looks so much different when you're actually there. But the other nice thing is I can actually see Big Ben from my office window in London.
That's the way.
So on the hour and on the quarter hour and on the half hour, I always know what time it is because Big Ben
Nice.
chimes. And
Yes.
that's just a really nice thing too. You know, you go in the morning and there's all these tourists taking photographs of Big Ben. Well, I get to see it from my office window every day, you know.
Nice.
So you do have to
Yeah.
sort of pinch yourself and think about the history of the place as well
Yeah.
now and again, you know, and its importance. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting. It's not all enjoyable, but it's very interesting.
Yeah. It sounds great. Sounds very interesting. And I suppose just finally I want to ask you about, what were your hopes for the Scottish Labour Party in May? Because let's be frank, Labour are in third place in Scotland,
Yeah,
and it's almost like the SNP are still going to be the biggest party. They might not have a majority, but I feel like the Labour Party in Scotland have got a long road ahead to
yeah.
climb. And the stuff in Westminster right now is not helping.
I think it's one of those things. I mean, I think it was Harold Wilson that said that a week is a long time in politics. So
Yeah.
6 months is a very long time in politics. And I'm very conscious of the fact that when I got selected to fight my seat, I was probably, I can't remember the exact figure, and I hope I'm not telling tales out of school here, but I think I was about number 18 on a list of candidates. And we were only thinking we would win 5 or 6 seats, and we won
Right.
37.
Well, that's
So
well.
things change very, very quickly.
Right.
And I certainly hope they change this time, because I think we need change, and I think we need the kind of change that a Labour government in Scotland could bring. I also think that Anas Sarwar is an excellent candidate for First Minister. I genuinely think that he is the right man to take Scotland forward for the next, I hope, 10, 15 years. He's a very thoughtful man. He's very experienced now. He really cares about people and about issues. And I think he would be a great First Minister of Scotland. And I hope he gets the chance to do that. And over the last number of years, while he's been the Scottish leader, He's built a really good team of potential ministers around him too. So I think he would have a very strong government, and I think he would make real change in Scotland, and I hope he gets that opportunity in 6 short months. But of course, it's up to the voters in Scotland what they decide, and we have to respect that. So hopefully we can persuade them.
Well, you've got 6 months to do that, and
Absolutely.
I'll be an interesting time, whatever.
Lots of doors to tap.
I want to do traveling. Yeah, that's all. I haven't done it. I don't think I like to do it.
Oh, it's not so bad.
You'd have a pretty thick skin.
Yeah, people by and large are lovely, and they appreciate that you're asking them what they're thinking. You know, apart from anything else, they like to be asked. And I think it's only right that politicians do go out and chap doors and talk to people, and do things like have roving surgeries and all that kind of thing, and be available to the public, because you're there to be answerable, and that's right. It's not always pleasant, but it's right, and we shouldn't shirk that. And I certainly don't, so I enjoy that. I love it.
Good. Well, that's the main thing. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today, and thank you so much for coming on my wee podcast. I don't have a huge following. I don't have a huge following or whatever you call it yet, but I thoroughly enjoyed doing this.
Good, I'm glad.
And just meeting people like yourself and talking to you. And it's been really interesting and inspiring, and I'm really grateful.
Yeah. Well, maybe the next time we speak, it'll be in London, in Westminster. If you come down to visit.
Fun.
Yeah, it would be lovely.
Yeah, I've only been there once, and I was walking past Westminster, and I had no intention of going in. I was on the way back to the hotel, and I thought, I'm just going to try and get in and see what. And I got right in, and somebody was so kind to me because I had my walking frame with me.
Right, yeah.
And the staff were so kind. They took me away, and they took that up on the left, and I got into the chamber.
Fantastic.
It's tiny.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
I was shocked because when I saw it tell you, I thought, no, it's tiny.
It is. It's really quite small. Yeah.
But so I would love to go back though.
Well, you should come back and do one of your podcasts from Westminster. That would be quite a thing.
Yeah, that'd be great fun. It'd be good fun.
It would.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for asking me on today. I really appreciate it.
Not at all. Thank you very much for your time and that again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and good luck with it. I hope you have thousands of followers within the next year. I'm sure you will.